Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Tom Brady. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I can't wait to get this interview rolling because I'm a fan of your work. I really
Oh,
like. I've always liked your work,
oh,
and so I wanted to
I
show
wasn't aware of that.
a few pictures of yours for those people who are unaware of the kind of work that you do. I thought this would be a great way to get them up to speed. So, can you tell me a little bit about some of these pictures that I'm seeing?
Yeah, this is a pretty old picture from I think when I first came to Philadelphia. I came to graduate school in 1980, and this is a few blocks from my house, Fifth and Olney. The storefronts. Um, I don't know.
Only is
Kind of liked how they looked.
Is there underpainting in this? Do you
Mm,
do you do like a
probably
undercolors
not.
at this point?
Probably not. I'm not. At some point, I did black and white on the paintings. Um, but mostly I do a lot of prep drawings before I do the painting. But then I generally do the painting on white canvas or gray canvas and go from beginning to end in a day. Or, sometimes go back the next day and touch up things that are not
Hmm.
quite right. But mostly they're done in a day. So most of the work I do is ahead of time. Um, and I work from pastels too. I guess that's the other thing.
You
Like
work
I do a
with pastels or from pastels?
from pastels. I do a pastel drawing at least the last, well, probably the last 40, 50 years. Yeah, I go out and do pastels on the spot. And I pick probably 1 out of 10 to do a painting from. And then from there, I do a lot of prep work. So this is a scene from Virginia where I go in the summertime. It's on one of the farms not too far from my house. It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So you frequently have the mountains in the background. Um,
I love the implied light in this. I mean, there's no real shadow, but it's the colors that really tell me that it's, middle of the day kind of a picture.
yeah, it seems a lot of the time I don't go out until the middle of the day. Uh, yeah, I think of people like David Park, whose work is always in deep shadow, and it's
Mm.
kind of like the always models had a spotlight on them from one side. But frequently I'm in the middle of the day. This is a guy at the Hess station. Uh, well, I stopped to get gas one day, and he was there, and I um, drew a picture of him before he left.
So
I don't know
did
if
you
you,
do that in pastels?
yeah,
Do you
yeah,
normally carry pastels around with you?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In the back of my van, I got a board that, with a strap that goes over my shoulders, so I can the board sits in front of me with a little tray with pastels, so I can draw on the board with a piece of paper, and my hands are pretty much free. Um, yes, I should have shown you that at some point, but yeah, it's. I used to sit down, but then my back went out, and standing, I used to use an easel, and then but I couldn't move around, so now I've got this board strapped to my shoulder, um, and I can. So if he moves, if he moves, I can walk with him. And frequently, people know that I'm drawing, but they don't know that I'm drawing him. So
Mm.
he's not spooked. But as soon
Hmm.
as he's spooked, the game's over.
Right, it
Um,
ruins it.
yeah. So
Did you ever
yeah.
hear that story with Ben Shawn? He used to carry a camera, but the camera would shoot sideways.
No, but I know photographers who used to shoot with a Rolly,
Yeah,
and you look down on it,
right.
and so the people weren't sure exactly, what you were shooting.
Yeah. Ben
Or
Shawn had one made special, but it shot sideways. So he
and he
was definitely
and he
shooting.
could and he could see the image to the camera there. I
Yeah,
mean, I guess
yeah,
that's a
it
good
was,
idea.
yeah.
I find that as long as they don't see my eyes,
Right,
I'm
right.
not
Otherwise it
sure.
ruins it. So this piece is going back quite some time. This is an older piece.
Yeah, this is court tennis. Um, there's a place in Philadelphia that's got an old court tennis
Mhm.
court, some fancy club downtown. And one of the people that I was showing was selling my work, Carmine Winters, got us in there to do drawings. Um, and then they had a little contest at the end, and the people picked out the best one. Kind of cheesy, but I got a good painting out of it. And and I wouldn't have access. I don't know if you know what court tennis is, but
Yeah.
it's not quite like tennis, and you can play against the walls, and it's kind of a neat game, which of course I've never played, but so yeah, that's what this was.
For me, the reason I picked this one is I love, especially the what was that, the right side of the figure. Those
Uh,
white paint lines are so sure of themselves. They're really like, they're not timid. They're really placed down, like they know where they're going. And it drew me to this picture
oh,
immediately.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like white. Oh.
Yeah. Who doesn't? Do you buy like twice as much white as any other
Yeah,
color?
I buy white in quarts as opposed to pints.
Yeah.
I buy a lot of paint. Uh, and so I buy a pint of all the colors.
What kind of
And then
paint do you mostly use?
I use Gamblin.
Okay.
I can get it from Jerry's Autorama. They
Hmm.
ship it here. There's no sales tax. And if you get it on sale, it goes from, 100 a can to 90 a can.
Right.
So it's still, we're talking thousands of dollars here. But I like the paint better than some of the other paints I used to use.
What's your slip medium that you use?
Just a little turpentine and linseed oil.
Just a little both. Yeah.
Well, mostly turpentine and a little bit of linseed oil.
Hmm.
Just enough to give it a little slipperiness. But
Yeah.
mostly it's paint. And I don't paint with paintbrushes anymore. I used
Oh
to
yeah.
have I used to have, 50 paintbrushes, and I still have them. But now I paint with paper towels.
Okay.
So I can take a goop of paint and make one color with it and then take another one. Um,
I can see that.
yeah, I use a lot of paper towels, but I don't have to wash the paintbrushes. I don't have to worry about paintbrushes getting mixed with
Yeah.
other colors. And
Yeah.
I've got a palette with 50 colors on it already out, so I can dip,
Yeah.
kind of like the Kooning used to have those cans or something.
Right. Right.
I get something like that.
Well, when I first really started to do a deep dive into your work, I mean, there two artists stood out to me that made me think of. The first was the early works of William Johnson, his paintings that he did, and then
Canadian?
obviously Frank Auerbach,
Yeah. Well,
sort of
Frank
thick.
Hollaback. I
Yeah,
don't know Johnson's work that man. I've come across it, but
it's
it's
the early work. It's
yeah.
hardly anybody knows it. So, but
Um,
the Auerbach is really that beautiful, letting paint be paint quality. Just
yeah.
like
I
it's almost like
saw
frosting.
I saw a show of Hollaback in London. I went to school there for a while, and he had a show at Bethel Green, like an old church or something.
Hmm.
And it was like, I mean, the paint was an inch thick. I mean, it was just,
Yeah. So
uh,
have you, when you first started painting, because you've been painting for years,
yeah.
were you always using this impasto, or did it get thicker over time?
At one point, I won a grant, and I had all this money I wasn't expecting,
Uh-huh.
so I could buy all the paint I wanted, which is unusual as well. I used to paint for a while, then and out of paint, and have to stop. And I think at that point, I started not worrying about it. I've always painted thickly,
Yeah.
but at some point, it got a lot thicker.
Yeah.
And I paint, as I say, I paint in a day, so so the colors go on top of colors on top of colors. Um,
Right.
um, this is a painting down in Virginia again, across the street, pretty much from where I live. Uh,
Yeah.
they cut the fields, and you get those stripes and the mountains in the background. Uh,
You had a lot of figurative work out there, but I seem to have been drawn to a lot of landscape pieces that you've done.
yeah,
Um,
strangely, I mean, I do probably half and half.
yeah.
Um, and sometimes I think the figures are a bit much for people. Either the colors aren't realistic enough, or
Yeah,
I
I
don't know. But on the other hand, I probably sell more pictures of people than I do of
of people.
landscapes.
Yeah.
which,
Well, it might also be the just that the commonality of those Van Gogh skies that you have.
oh,
They're a
okay.
little sometimes they're a little troubling, and sometimes they're just like frosting, really.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, a lot of the work
So,
is mark orientated, things that imply movements. Uh, so,
so I want to start today's interview with a question that I often give, and I love this question. What was your first exposure to art?
well, I mean, we had a painting over the in the in the living room, which wasn't much for painting, and my uncle had a painting in his house. But basically, not until I got to college. Um,
Really?
yeah, I wasn't. I was a jock. I mean, I didn't think about painting, and never occurred to me.
What did you go
But
to school for? What did you go to school for?
well, I was going to probably chemistry,
Okay.
mathematics, chemistry.
So how did that
At
slide
that
into art happen?
well, luckily, I went to Amherst, and Amherst is a very competitive place
Uh-huh.
with a lot of people a lot smarter than me. And I found quickly that if you really weren't interested in something, you couldn't compete. And I was good at math and I was good at physics and stuff, but it wasn't like I was that interested in it. I just did it. So I didn't do that well. And that was good. So I took art as a gut. So I figured out, how badly can you do, right? It's a liberal arts school, not artists. And I so I took it and I liked it. And then I studied with a guy named Fairfield Porter. He was there for a year.
You study with Fairfield.
Yeah,
Nice.
he was there for a year. I didn't know he was,
Yeah.
you know,
I love his
later,
work, and now I can actually see some of that in yours.
yeah. And he'd paint out the windows, and some
Yeah.
of the paintings he did that year were just wonderful. And I'd watch him paint, and make comments on it. And I mean, with ignorance, such a, I said to him one day, "Gee, I liked it better yesterday." As I say,
That
you can't impress somebody if they don't know who the hell you are.
yeah,
Um,
right.
and
That's
he was,
definitely
and
a statement that two artists make to each other. It's just flat out, no, 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 you ruined it. This is
uh,
you should have left it
I
alone.
wasn't quite that brazen, but
So
but it
tell me,
was neat. It was neat to see
how,
him paint because he painted ordinary stuff and made it wonderful. And maybe I took that away from him more than anything else.
I can see that. So tell me, how does your creative process work? So you told me that you have pastels that you carry around, but uh, do you when you're do you always use that in your process? Is there always a sketch made prior, or sometimes do you just go?
No, I'm always working from something.
Always working
Um,
on something.
I'm not. I was never very good out of my head. I'm always kind of reactive to this thing or that thing. And I do probably. I draw probably half the year.
Hmm.
So I start drawing in say May, and I draw until September. So I've got pastel a day. So I've got well, I mean, going into my studio, I probably had 100 pastels that I was looking at, and
Are these oil pastels or
yeah,
chalk
oil pastels.
oil
Yeah,
pastels?
I hate
Have
chalk.
you ever had an exhibit of just your pastel drawings?
I've had an exhibit with pastel drawings. Um, I've I don't do that, especially in Philadelphia, because the pastels tend to be somewhat more referential, um,
Hmm.
and the paintings tend to be more abstract. Uh, and I like the paintings more than the pastels. Plus, the paintings are this big, and the
Right.
pastels are 11 by 15. Um, and I guess I could, but I always thought I'd have a secondary market with them. I could sell them cheap, well, relatively cheap.
I would
And
love to see some of those. I mean, I love to know process, because to
uh,
me that's a foothold into the thinking of the artist. So um, I would love to see some of those, at least a few on the website, or maybe there are and I missed them.
well, if you go to my Instagram account, uh, there was some mixed in that I posted. I don't know if you can tell, but you
Hmm.
probably would be.
I'll have to go back and look.
Um, Not many.
So when
Yeah.
so I'm getting an understanding of the process that you use. I'm curious, do you ever get to a point in the paintings where you realize that the painting isn't working? And do you ever then either redo the painting or do you ever discard the painting? Do you ever just like, okay, this one's not working? Or do you keep plowing
Uh,
through?
I plow through to the end.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets changed at the very end a whole bunch, and
Okay.
sometimes that makes it wonderful, and sometimes it makes it dead. But I basically, I finish them in a day and I put them aside.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't tell if it's I can't tell at the end if it's good. I
It
mean,
was probably better the day before.
but given 6 months, I can tell.
Have you
Uh,
ever worked paintings from like a long time ago, like years and years, and just like repainted over those?
no, because the paint's thick and
Hmm.
bumpy,
Mm-hmm.
and and part of the reason I don't paint over like a week because I'd have to scrape it every day, and which I've done.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty hard to paint over painting that's the paint sticks out in gobs,
Right.
because either it skims over and you've got to
Uh-huh.
you know and it or you scrape. I mean, at one point I was painting outside every day, and I'd paint for a day and scrape it off, and go back the next day, and over a month, got more and more and more realistic, and um, more and more boring. uh, so I started working again from pastels because I could
I
draw
love
anything from a pastel, whether it's a person in a diner or somebody in a street corner or a landscape. Um, I can do that and use that as a selection process. Uh,
so the question that I always formulate specific questions for artists. Sometimes I regurgitate some, but this is a question that knowing your work, I'm dying to ask you. So it's kind of open-ended question. Let's talk color. Tell me what you think about color.
oh, I think colors color's the most radical thing in the art world, um, especially in a society that cherishes gray and white. If you look at all the cars, you never see a color. And if you see a color, it's this crappy red, not a real red. So I like real colors. And I like how they mix together. I like how, you know, you can mix yellow and yellow and orange and get a third color. I mean, and the colors upon colors lead to a color you didn't see before, or a color that's mixed just slightly with another color.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I, I spent a lot of money on colors. Um, most of the things I buy are yellows and reds and greens and blues.
Right.
Not many browns. Kind of a lot of blacks, but the
Well,
olives
I
and the
find a lot of
cyanos
artists
and
are
stuff.
sometimes afraid of those, bold colors, and sometimes
Oh,
audiences are afraid of colors.
well, I think audiences are. I don't know about artists. I think,
Yeah, there's some are.
uh,
I bet a
well,
few.
uh, well, some are cheap too. Because
Yeah,
the good colors
true.
cost more. uh, yeah, I mean, I like using those colors. You know, uh,
Especially when you're using that thick paint. To me, it really loads that color up,
well,
and
yeah,
that's
and
what
if
I
you
like
use
about your work.
if you
It's
have
got
if
that.
you buy decent colors, um, the yellows hold up.
Yeah,
They don't dilute after you touch them with something else. You can
yeah.
actually go. You can use a cadmium yellow light and go over something, and still have it cadmium yellow light if you wanted to, and if you use enough paint, which I do. I mean,
I
I
would love
have
to see you. I need to go back. I think there's a video of you online where you're actually working. I want to see you work with some colors.
yeah. Well, that's actually a black and white. So
Oh, okay.
it's
Oh,
a
there's
black
not
and white.
another color one. All right,
Well, there
I'll
may
check on.
be.
Yeah, I'll
Uh,
check.
yeah, I
So
did some black and white underpaintings, and I filmed one of those. I stopped
yeah,
doing
it's
that
on your
'cause-
website, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I was thinking about you, out in the field drawing things, and it's really what you see and how you bring that back into the studio. And I'm wondering, do you consider your works to be like autobiographical? because it is following, your journey through life, or or is that separate? You don't really care about yourself in the pictures? I'm
Well,
curious.
it's autobiographical because I'm only drawing stuff I like.
Mhm.
Um, so when I do a landscape, it's that particular landscape at that particular time and that light quality. Um, it may be different the next day and I wouldn't draw it. And when I draw a person, it's somebody I feel empathetic relationship with. So in
Hmm.
that regard, it's autobiographical.
Hmm.
Uh, and sometimes maybe all the portraits of me in
Oh,
some ways. I mean,
maybe, right?
not
Yeah,
really,
that's what they usually
but
sometimes say.
um,
So a lot of times, the pictures I see of yours are very sort of intimate. You're not painting gigantic wall murals, or am I wrong
uh,
about that?
well, the biggest I probably ever painted is I was did some. Well, it would be say 60 by 80 would be
Hmm.
probably the biggest. But I'm painting on wood too.
Hmm. Okay.
So
So there are a few large ones.
yeah, there are some large, mostly 3 by 4.
Yeah.
I
Have you
think
ever
three by
made
four feet.
prints out of your pictures?
I belong to something that people could buy prints out of them. Um,
Okay.
but I had an art storefronts thing at one point, and anybody could order a print. Um, other, but they didn't really.
Yeah. Well, it's
Uh,
difficult. You need to be there in the moment. So.
and I don't know. I mean, I thought the prints would be a secondary market. I thought the pastels be a secondary market. Um, but I
I
think
think
the
prints
people
of
who
yours would
liked it,
work really well, but you need the right partner to be able to sell them, I think. But the
yeah,
color of your stuff just really loans it.
yeah, I would
Um,
think so too. But again, my presumption is that somehow people would just buy this because it's cheap
right. Yeah.
and it's,
That's just the art market. That's just
but,
marketing.
but,
That's all.
but
Well,
uh,
hopefully this whole video will change all of that. So the orders are going to be pouring in
well,
soon.
I'm hoping that I'm hoping
So
I'll be rich and famous tomorrow.
there you go.
But just in
So
case.
I've got one final question. Boy, this
Oh,
went by quickly. I've got one final question for you. It's a simple question, but I love asking this of artists. What does making art do for you?
oh, connects me to the world. Connects me to myself for that matter. It it makes my life wonderful. I see stuff that I every day that I think, wow. And sometimes those wows are just a quiet whisper. They're not always bong, but you know, but that's that quiet whisper is nice too.
Right.
Just to see something that, oh, I could do something with that, or I don't have to do anything but try to capture it. Um, and so yeah, it makes my life great.
That's
um,
that's perfect. There's no wrong answer, but
yeah,
it's
I
it's
know.
wonderful to hear artists say how valuable they find art for their existence. So
Oh yeah, yeah,
great.
yeah.
So Tom, I want to thank you so much for coming by today and allowing me the opportunity to talk with you. I now have a lot more questions for you,
Oh,
so we'll need to have something else so I can get those answered. I want to thank everybody who tuned in today to watch this interview. I want to encourage everybody to please like and subscribe. That encourages us to make more of these. We really appreciate it. And again, thank you very much for coming by today and talking to us about your work.
no, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
So
it.
take care,
Bye now.
everyone.